Hey guys, another episode's been approved for public release, but just barely. But I'm okay with that. Today we need to talk about one of the most dangerous feelings in government contracting. Comfort. Not confidence. Confidence can be earned. Confidence can come from discipline or training experience, strong systems or tested controls, and people who actually know what they're doing. That kind of confidence is useful. I'm talking about the other kind, the comfortable kind, the kind that sounds like, we've never had a problem. We've been doing it this way for years. Our people know what they're doing. Our customers never complained. And our files are always fine during audits. Our processes works. Maybe. Or maybe your system just has never been tested by the right kind of pressure. Because in this world, nothing blowing up yet is not the same thing as control. Sometimes it just means the fuse is no longer than you thought. That's the danger of false confidence. It does not feel reckless or sloppy. It does not feel like risk. It feels normal and familiar. It even feels earned. And that's exactly why it gets good companies in trouble. Because the system feels fine. Right up until the pressure finds the crack.
This broadcast has been cleared for public release, but just barely.
Broadcasting from deep inside the Federal Acquisition Labyrinth, this is the GovCon Show. This show is for acquisition pros, wannabe pros, and procurement insiders who need a place to unpack the chaos. We speak fluent contracting and sarcasm. No clearance required. This is the GovCon Show. And away we go!
Welcome back to the GovCon Show. This is the show that provides therapy for the overworked, the overregulated, and the underappreciated. This is the show where we break down the reality behind federal contracting, the pressure, the responsibilities, and the decisions that actually matters. Here, nothing is off limits. We've seen it all, and we talk about it with a little sarcasm and just enough attitude to keep it real. So, let's talk about false confidence. Let's start with the note that false confidence doesn't look like chaos. False confidence does not usually look like a disaster. That's why companies missed it. It doesn't show up wearing a blinking red helmet and carrying a sign that says, future problem forming here, future problem. Nah. False confidence looks professional. It looks like a company that's been around for a while. It looks like everyone in the room nodding because they've seen this before. And sometimes that confidence is justified. Sometimes the company really does have that kind of control. The processes really work. Sometimes the people know exactly what they're doing. But sometimes what feels like control is really just repetition. And repetition can be sneaky because if you do something long enough, it starts to feel right, even if nobody has tested whether or not it still works. And that's how false confidence grows. Not from chaos, but from familiarity, being familiar. And being familiar is dangerous because it stops people from asking the basic questions. Why do you do it this way? Would this hold up if somebody outside the company looked at it? That last one is always fun. Nothing says stability like someone discovering efficiency with a machete. And one of the most dangerous phrases in business is, well, we've always done it this way. And in GovCon, it has a close cousin. We've done it like this for years. That sounds so reassuring, and it can even be true. But it is not evidence that the system is controlled. It's only evidence that the system has existed. Very different thing. A company may have used the same processes for years, but has anyone tested whether or not similar facts produce similar outcomes? Let's be honest, some approvals are truly not approvals. They're just digital hand waves, truthfully. Some reviews are not real reviews. They're drive-by blessings with initials. And when people say we've done it this way for years, what they often mean is this is familiar enough that nobody questions it anymore. That is not control. That is tradition with better formatting. Here's another trap. Nothing has blown up. No major audit problem. So the company assumes things are fine. And maybe they are. But silence isn't proof. Sometimes silence means that the system is healthy. Sometimes silence means that the same weak decision has been repeated so consistently that everyone now thinks it's normal. That's the part people miss. Risk doesn't always announce itself early. It accumulates. A small exception here, a handoff problem there, one assumption that never gets written down. Nothing happens that seems catastrophic all by itself, but together, all of it tells a story. And the story may not be the one leadership thinks it's telling. That's why nothing has happened yet. And yet companies use it all the time. They do not call it that. They do not call it experience. Sometimes they call it, we know our customer. Maybe. But the quiet system still needs to be tested, because the first time a hidden weakness becomes visible should not be when the customer or the auditor or the new VP of contracts is the one pointing it out. Now let's talk about good people, because good people are important. Experienced people matter. Judgment matters. Having strong contracting, procurement, and compliance people truly matter. And this is not an anti-people episode at all. But good people can accidentally hide weak systems. That's one of the most uncomfortable truths there is in this business. A good buyer can work around a very bad process. A good contracts manager can catch issues before they escape. Because if the right person has to be involved for the outcome to be good, then the system may not be as strong as you think it is. That's not an insult to the person. That's the whole point. A controlled system should not depend entirely on Brenda remembering where everything is, or Bob knowing which supplier caused the trouble. And while the folder name "use this one" should absolutely not be used. Bob and Brenda both are likely wonderful, hard-working people. And Brenda may be the only thing standing between your company and a corrective action plan with seasonal depression. But Brenda is not a control system. She's a person. And people retire, people get promoted, people burn out. They even take vacation at the exact moment the file catches on fire. And if the system works when the right person is present, then the system is not controlled. It is supervised by luck. False confidence usually collapses under pressure. Not ordinary pressure, severe pressure. The kind that changes the conditions just a little bit. A new customer, a fixed price conversion, a reviewer pulling the file nobody expected them to pull. And that's when the comfortable system gets tested. And pressure does not create the weakness. It just reveals it. Because when the pressure arrives, it feels like the problem came out of nowhere. But it didn't. It was just wearing normal clothes. Now, the fixed price shift is only one example. It's not the only example, but a very current example. A contractor has operated comfortably in cost-type T&M or labor environments may feel very confident because he knows the work. But when that same work moves into fixed price, the old confidence may not be enough. Now scope matters, and it matters differently. Schedule slips matter differently. The work may be familiar, but the risk isn't. And that's how false confidence gets really expensive. Here's a line worth sitting with. Familiar is not the same as defensible. A process can feel very familiar and still fail under review. The danger is that familiarity creates comfort, and comfort reduces curiosity. People stop asking questions that they should rely on. The kind of questions that feel annoying when everybody is comfortable. But those are the questions that you need to keep comfort for turning into exposure. That's why experienced contract professionals sometimes sound very cautious. Not because they want to slow everything down, not because they enjoy being the person who says, hold on, let's think about this. Although some do seem to really enjoy that dramatic pause. That's because they don't know comfort can lie, and they know the system has to survive more than today's meeting. Another thing about this whole thing, false confidence loves past successes too. Past success is very useful, but it can also become a trap. We passed this audit before. We've never had an issue before. Good, that matters. But past success is not a lifetime exemption from future risk. It tells you the system survived a prior set of conditions. It does not prove the system will survive the next one. And that's especially true in government contracting because the environment changes, the rules change, priorities change at the agencies, and sometimes the same company keeps using the same comfortable assumptions long after the environment has moved on. That is where false confidence turns into exposure. The company thinks it's standing on experience, but it may be standing on outdated service or outdated evidence. And that's a very different floor to be on, right? And that floor cracks. Now let's spend a minute on what good confidence looks like. What does healthy confidence look like? It does not sound like, well, we're fine. It sounds like we've tested it. That's the difference. Healthy confidence comes from evidence. It comes from sampling files and checking whether similar facts produce similar results. Healthy confidence is not loud, it's not defensive, and it does not get offended when someone asks questions because it can answer them. That's how you know the difference. False confidence says, why are you asking? And healthy confidence says, here's what we found. False confidence tries to protect the story. Healthy confidence tests the system. That is the standard. All right, guys, if this episode is landing a little too close to home, that probably means it found something useful because the point is not to shame good companies. Good companies do not need shame. They need visibility. They need to know whether their confidence is earned or just familiar. To help our clients make these decisions, the GovCon Advisory Group built practical risk evaluations for our clients. They're free and anyone can use them. All you've got to do is go to our website and search for the assessment tools. Don't wait till someone tests your system for you. That's an expensive version. Just go to our website at govconadvisorygroup.com. Check out our suite of diagnostic tools. So let's bring this home. False confidence is comfortable. That's what makes it so dangerous. It does not feel reckless or careless. It does not feel like a system is about to explode. It feels very familiar. It feels very normal. And maybe all of that is true. But the question is not whether the system feels familiar. The question is whether or not the system is tested. Can it produce consistent outcomes? Can it survive the pressure? can it work without that one person who knows everything? And that's the test, because good companies do fail. Not because they're bad, not because they lack talent. They fail because the system felt fine longer than it should have. They fail because confidence started doing the work that control should have been doing. Remember, the worst time to discover false confidence is right after it becomes evidence. All right, guys, that does it for this episode. If this episode made you laugh, flinch, or quietly think, yeah, we might be doing some of that, then subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Hit that like button and share it with another contracting professional who deserves an advance warning. If your team needs help fixing the system behind the risk, visit govconadvisorygroup.com. As always, we have been broadcasting from deep inside the Federal Acquisition Labyrinth. Where getting anything done requires a map, a meeting, 3 approvals, and someone in the background saying, well, let's circle back. All right, remember, this episode has been cleared for public release, but just barely.
If today's episode sounded a little too familiar, that's probably a sign. Until next time, keep your files tight, your logic tighter. Remember, if your compliance approach is built on checking boxes, you're building risk. We'll see you next time on the GovCon Show.
This broadcast has been cleared for public release, but just barely.